Well, hey, tubers, tubettes, ever widening circle of crazy people. This is going to be a budget video. And what my monthly expenses are living out here in Dumaguete slash Valencia slash Bakong slash Dallin. Those are all kind of the same area. Um, and I'm just going to cut to the chase because I know I hate it when guys talk for 25 minutes and you're still waiting to figure out what the number is. My budget since I got here 4.5 years ago to yesterday has been about $1,500. And I say about because as life happens, things change. There's been months where I've spent $3,000 because of whatever has popped up. And then there's been months where I've been able to live on only $1,000 a month. But if I average it out and I'm fair with myself and I'm fair with you, $1,500 seems to be my number. Between rent, and this is with three different places. I've had two apartments and now one house. And each place that I lived in, all three of them, the rent was about $400, round numbers, plus utilities. Utilities is primarily electric, water, propane gas, and even bottled water is maybe makes $10 a month. It's just one of those little nicky-nacky charges. It's really very inexpensive. My water bill, for example, is 20 pesos a month for tap water. And then it's maybe another $2, $3 a month for bottled water that's getting delivered. The gas that runs our propane stovetop is 1,000 pesos per bottle, but we don't get one but every 5 or 6 months. So again, it's just one of those expenses that I almost forget about. And when the gas runs out, it's like, okay, it's $20 and we'll be good for another 5 or 6 months. And the guy delivers that. So that being said, the biggest variable for my expenses would be the electric, and it's just not that big of a variable. I've paid as low as $30 last month, but we've had a record number of brownouts. So electricity hasn't been on half the month. So I knew the bill was going to be low. But I would say that, $40 or $50 a month is a fair number for me at my current residence. And again, none of it's exact. I've paid as much as $100 a month for electricity at my previous apartment just because it was hot and we had the air on all day and we tended to stay home for some reason. And we were being a little bit overcharged from what the rail rate was by the landlord because he thought that was fair to overcharge on the kilowatt hour because he was having to light up the grounds, if you will. So he passed that on to us. Where that doesn't happen here at the McGill compound, the current McGill compound. So whether or not that's something you can live on, I have no clue. I have guys write me, not incessantly, but probably the majority of the questions that I get is, how much do I need to live there? And it's an impossible thing for me to say. All I can tell you is how much it costs me to live here. Now, and I live off my Social Security check. The good news for me is that my Social Security check exceeds $1,500. So obviously, if I stick to that $1,500, I can put away a few $100 every month. And that tends to add up. And I'll do some numbers for you in a minute. Anyway, getting back to my budget, my overall nut each month, the set static expenses comes to about $500. And I haven't eaten anything, I haven't brushed my teeth, I haven't purchased any clothes, I haven't burned any gas, I haven't gone anywhere for entertainment or meals or the proverbial coffee outside of the house. So the other $1,000, that's where that goes. It goes to food, it goes to entertainment, it goes to gas in a scooter, it goes to when May sees something cute hanging from an okai store, and we go in there and she gets 4 pairs of shorts for $3 or something like that. And I don't keep receipts or keep track of that. I just spend the money. What I found back in the day, the way that I worked it was this. Since I received Social Security, I receive my check on the second Wednesday of every month. And months can, and the second Wednesday can fall either in a 4 week time frame or a 5 week time frame, depending on how the months go. I think there's 5 months that it's 5 weeks prior between checks, and the other months are 4 weeks. So here's what I did, because I actually wrote this down for a change. If I have $1,000, and I've taken out 1,500, I have 1,000 left over. If I have a 28-day time frame before I get my next check, that leaves me, if I divide the 1,000 by the 28 days, that's $35 a day that I could spend. And at the current exchange rate, that would give me 1,785 pesos per day before the $1,000 is exhausted. If it's a 35-day period of time, a 5-weeker we call them, that would be $28.50 a day, which breaks down to 1,400, and I can't see if I wrote a 2 or a 7. Let's say 1,428 pesos per day in my wallet. 1 month, what I did was I did that calculation, and I think I was single at the time. I didn't have a girlfriend. And so I would take the 1,785, for example, and I would put that in my wallet. And I would say, okay, that's my budget for today. And I would go out, and maybe I would go to lunch, maybe I would go get a beer, maybe I would meet with some people. And if I spent the 1,785, well, my day was over as far as spending money goes, and I would usually come home. There were many days where I couldn't spend 1,000 pesos because I just didn't do that much. I went and had a cup of coffee at McDonald's instead of the $4 coffee at Starbucks. I would eat a meal that was relatively inexpensive as opposed to going into a foreigner type of bar or resto bar and spending, $10. I would spend $2 on something local. And I would come home with extra money. And I would leave the extra money in my wallet, still replace it with, how much was it, 1785. And now maybe I've got 2785. And on. You get the gist. And so I found that to be a way to kind of keep a governor. And I found that living out here is a cash society. Can you use a credit card? Yeah. Can you use a debit card? Yeah. Do they take them everywhere? No. You have to be in a big department store or a big supermarket for them to take a credit card or a debit card. Majority of what we do out here is on a cash basis. And I have found that it's a lot easier to stay on budget with cash as opposed to the painless credit card. So impulse purchases out here, for me, are way down as opposed to what they were in America. I'll just throw it on the card. I'd see something new and shiny and think I needed it. That's no big deal. I'll just pay it next month. Toss it on the card or on the debit card. Now here, when you see the money going from your hand to that guy's hand, at least for me, it's a little mental reminder that this thing I'm buying actually does cost real life money. Some digital thing out there on the internet. All right, so what will affect your budget, or my budget rather? Where do you live? I live, again, I have to clarify, this is a budget for living on Negros Oriental in Dumaguete/Valencia, and I don't pretend to know what it costs to live in the province. I hear that there's guys that live for $500 or $800 or $700, and I imagine they do. They have YouTube channels. They talk about those sort of things. But to be honest with you guys, I've never lived in the province. I wouldn't want to live in the province. I wouldn't want to live in a native style house without aircon and without, you know, just some of the amenities that I've grown used to. I have heard, I have never done it, but I have heard that if you move to a bigger city like Makati or Manila, that you can expect your budget to go up by 50%, 100%. It might double depending on where you go. Could be 3,000. And I guess the biggest thing that affects a budget out here is habits and lifestyle and what it is that floats your boat. So you may have an issue where you like to drink and I don't drink, but on occasion, but I do know guys that spend most of the day drinking and then eating, and they just happen to spend a lot more money than I do on that particular vice, if you will. I smoke, but that costs me $60 a month. I already figured that out. It's a stat. It's part of my budget. You can go on the 35 day. I think I covered it on 1,428 pesos. That's $28.50. I find that to be very doable. Now let's get down to the $1,000 a month deal. I've done a $1,000 a month challenge to myself a couple of times, and it wasn't all that painful. It really just boiled down to, I can't make it any more complicated than this. It just boiled down to eating at home. If I didn't go out, I didn't burn any gas, I stayed in the house and ate my meals that I'd already purchased in bulk. Prepared it. If I did go out, I would, like I said, I wouldn't spend big money. I would instead of going for a $4 cup of coffee at Tom Tom's or Bo's or Starbucks, I'd get a cup of coffee for $1 at McDonald's with free refills. It was that simple. It really was. Yeah, if I saw something bright and shiny, I just didn't buy it because I didn't need it. I didn't have to have it. And I was trying to be a lot more strict with myself. There's a real big side benefit to all of this, I think, that I also thought about prior to coming out here, and so far it's worked for me. I just Googled what's the average Social Security check, and Google told me that right now, as of 2021, it was $1,437. There's going to be a 5.9% increase in that starting in January. Those will start to show up on Social Security checks. On 1437, that's $84, which guess what? That takes us to $1,521, the number I've been talking about. So, if you can live out here on the proverbial $1,000 a month, which really is quite doable if you just don't have a lot of extracurricular activities. If you lead a little more humble life, have your meals at home. If you go out, you don't have to have the whoop-de-doo meal. You can go eat a little more native, a little more local, I should say. Get a water instead of a Coke for free, you know, that kind of thing. You can save $500 a month. Now, if you live out here a year and you do that religiously, at the end of the year, you've saved $6,000. And if you've lived out here coming on 5 years, like I have, you would magically wake up on the fifth year anniversary with $30,000 in the bank. And that's not a bad little number. The next question I get is, how much money should I bring with me when I go out there? Again, I can only tell you that I came with $6,000 cash, and I think I had $8,000 in my bank account at home. And I brought $6,000 because I was just convinced that if I tried to transfer money, something would go wrong. So I wanted to make sure that I had enough money. Hindsight being 2020, which it always is, I probably would have bounced into town with a couple $3,000, if that much, and left it in the bank, because transferring the money out here has never been an issue. I shouldn't say never. Sometimes the computers are down. Sometimes you have to wait a day or two because of some snafu in the system. But for the most part, I've been able to get my money without any issues whatsoever. I use a company called Zoom. It's more expensive than Wise, which used to be TransferWise. Why don't I switch to Wise? Because I'm lazy, number one. Number two, the difference in the transfer fee isn't great enough. And number three, Zoom knows me, I know Zoom. We seem to have a good relationship. And for me, it's worth the extra $3 or $4 just to stay with the status quo. However, I am set up with Wise, and I think it's Remitly, that I just have the apps and always have a plan B, right, or a C. So, that being said, that's the budget video. Where else can I go with this? Oh, that's right. How much money should you bring? There are some dynamics when you first get here, or at least when I first got here, that I was going to need setup cash. So when I rented apartments and in this house, they were furnished. But I still had to go out and buy stuff like sheets and pillows and dishes, coffee maker, and the furniture. At least when I first got here, my first apartment was almost unusable. It was just so small and really hard and uncomfortable. But the places would come with a TV and a couch, if you want to call it that, and a chair and a table for dining, which was fine. The kitchen usually had the stovetop, the refrigerator. Some had a microwave. So again, for me, it was just maybe $1,000 to get set up with the sheets, the pillows, the plates, the dishes, the cookware, pots, pans, knives, forks, this, that, the other, you know the drill. And I bought a couch. I think it was $400 because I couldn't take the furniture. Since then, at Big Rock, where I lived, is the perfect place, this type of place, I think, for a person that's just coming out here and settling in and not bringing a bunch of stuff with them. And they want to park and they don't want to expend a lot of cash. So Big Rock Apartments, where I lived prior to this house, they actually gave you pots, pans, cookware, microwave, forks, spoons, not everything that I could use. The only thing missing was a coffee maker, but it had a hot water kettle, so you could make instant coffee if you so desired, or I could. Sheets were all brand new. Everything that you could, it was like an Airbnb place. And so as a single guy or a married guy, I suppose, doesn't make a difference, you'll walk into an apartment similar to that and not spend anything or very little. Transportation, I own a scooter, and I think I paid back in the day $1,600 for that. I think that same scooter runs about $2,000, maybe $2,100 today, again, inflation. So when I first came out here, it was really a lot more expensive. And I know I exceeded that $1,500 the first few months because I was taking trikes, public transportation, and they were ripping me off left and right, which is fine. It's part of the learning curve. I was eating out 2-3 meals a day because I didn't, the pots and the pans I hadn't gotten yet, or it was a hassle to find the right ones. And so when I first came out here, it was more expensive in anything and everything I did. I made mistakes, but to be completely, totally square and fair, if I settle it all out, it's still at the $1,500 mark. How much money should you bring when you come out here? I would if I had to do, I can't tell you what to do, but if I was to do it again, I would have scaled it way back because that 6,000 in my pocket made me very nervous. I really didn't have a safe place to put it. None of the places that I moved into initially, at least the first 2 years, had a safe. I couldn't get a bank account until, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into the deal. And so that was always on the back of my mind. I would take it and I would hide it in different places, and $100 bills, and so that just kind of added to the stress level. So, how much money should you have as a backup plan? Again, I can't tell you. I had $8,000, but by sticking to my little formula, and I also receive additional revenue now that the YouTube that we do is monetized. I have more money in the bank than when I arrived here, which was my initial plan. I had it in my head that I was going to spend $1,000 a month, and I was going to put away at least $500-600 a month. And you remember the math: $6,000, which turns 5 years later into $30,000. Well, I didn't live on $1,000. I lived on $1,500, but I still put a few dollars away every month. And math is math. It just keeps adding up. So to say that I've got more money in the bank, less stress, I have my issues with every place that I've lived. Right now I'm dealing with karaoke. It's not Disneyland out here, boys and girls, but it is an opportunity where a senior citizen like myself can take their check of $1,500. Well, $1,521 is the average, so we're going to stick with that. And I can't live in America for $1,521. I would have to continue to work or put off taking my Social Security, or take my Social Security and then work part-time to supplement that and get it up to at least $3,000. I think that's a minimum for me in the States, and that wouldn't be any highfalutin lifestyle. So that, my friends, is the budget video. If you have questions, comments, feel free to leave them. I'm really slow at getting back to the comments because we always have brownouts. So sometimes I'm 8 hours away from being able to get on the computer and actually do anything. But I'd like to hear from you. If I've missed something or you have a specific question, feel free to leave it. All right. I will talk to you kids later. Bye.